Glenn Beck apparently has some pretty bad news. He's got the COVID. Now, while getting COVID isn't nearly as deadly for those who are vaccinated and boosted, people like Glenn Beck are not vaccinated and apparently have a much more difficult time dealing with or even surviving the virus. In fact, the unvaccinated are way more likely, about at least 13 times more likely to end up in the hospital with serious symptoms. Now, this isn't the first time that Glenn Beck had to battle COVID. And in fact, he's going to go on Mark Levin's show and they're going to have this exchange. Take a look.
Now, do you have COVID right now?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've been off for about a week. I mean, I've been doing my show. It's a lighter case, but it's now starting to go into my lungs today, and a little disturbing. But I'm on all the medication and treatment and everything else. So we'll see.
So wait a minute, it's going
good.
into your. Have you gotten any monoclonal? I'm serious about this.
No, the monoclonal doesn't seem to be working for the new strain, and you can't. But I'm on ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fluvoxin. I'm on a bunch of different. I mean, and my doctors are hitting it really hard.
You know what's amazing? When we tried to get that stuff, my pharmacist looked at me like I was, a heroin addict.
You don't say. You don't say. Oh, hey, it turns out when I asked for the horse dewormer and fish tank cleanser and all the other stuff that doesn't work, my doctor looked at me like I was a moron. No kidding. Gee, I wonder why he would think that. He or she, I don't know. I just don't get why they would think I'm a moron. No self-awareness at all. None. But what's interesting here is the admission that the monoclonal antibody treatment doesn't work for Omicron. So that's very interesting because here we have Republicans that are actually able to, understand that studies and again, there are numerous studies that have been proven that monoclonal antibodies are not effective against the Omicron variant. And so they can clearly see that the science on that and believe the science on that, but not on the vaccines. Very, it kind of shows you that they really love to pick and choose what kind of stuff or science that they want to believe in. And so, monoclonal no longer works. They understand that, but also my natural immunity, my ivermectins, and the zinc, we got to get the zinc. Well, obviously, if you already had COVID, if you had COVID once and then you caught it again, well, then that seems to be a failure of natural immunity to prevent your reinfection. Plus, of course, all the stuff that right-wingers have been taking that they claim to be a prophylactic. What's next? Is Glenn Beck going to start drinking his own pee? I mean, again, it's not like that hasn't already been suggested by anti-vaxxers. But I've got more. There's more to this interview. Take a look.
Now, how long have you had this?
I've had it for about a week.
But it's not stabilizing?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm not going downhill. I mean, I think I'm feeling better. It's just getting into my lungs, which is,
but that's the problem.
You want to avoid that. But I'm feeling better, and I'm, Mark, I am not concerned about it. I'm really not. I am so done with this whole COVID thing. I mean, I know it's real. Right now, everybody's getting sick because it's very contagious, but it's not nearly as deadly. I'm a Fatty-Fat-Fatso, so that's probably not the best thing. And I've got some other issues, but that's just the way it is.
Oh yeah, you got some other issues, all right. I mean, your brain. Look, hey, maybe it's a good thing that he's taking ivermectin to try to get rid of the brain worms that he has. But no, seriously, the guy does not sound good. He sounds really, really like not horrible, not like Ron DeSantis wheezing or having an emotional outburst, but he doesn't sound good. He sounds kind of bad, and I got bad news for him as well. Turns out, COVID being in your lungs, not a good thing. Actually a bad thing. But here's the thing. It's a respiratory infection. Guys, it was always in your lungs. Glenn, it was always in your lungs. That does not mean it's getting better. In fact, when you show symptoms, that's usually when it starts to get worse. Now, I remember Herman Cain tweeting from a hospital bed saying, "You know what? I'm in the hospital. I'm feeling better though. I'm feeling great, feeling strong. Yeah." And then he died. The first winner of the Herman Cain Award, by the way. Now, I'm not saying Glenn Beck's going to die. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, and by the way, Omicron, yes, is a little less deadly than the Delta variant. If you are vaccinated. If you're unvaccinated, then it's still pretty deadly. And now also the other thing is you heard Glenn Beck calling himself a Fatty-Fat-Fatso? Literally fat shaming himself. Now you might think, oh, that's odd. Maybe he's just being a little self-deprecating, whatever, right? Now I have that self-deprecating sense of humor, and I myself am a little bit of a fatty-fat-fatso. But here's the thing. He says that for a reason. There's kind of a purpose around this. Because later on, he goes into minimizing COVID. We just have to live with it. Now, that's a conservative talking point where they basically have been claiming for some time now that no. The only people that are really at risk of COVID-19, of dying, are fat people. In fact, here's Jack Posobiec, right-wing troll, making that claim. He said, oh, most of the virus deaths come from people who are overweight. So basically, if you're a fatty-fat-fatso, then of course, you're really the only ones that are dying from the virus. And if you're, if you're younger and if you're so-called healthy, and Candace Owens also made that claim. Well, when she was feuding with, for some reason I can't think of her name now. Meghan McCain, thank you. Meghan McCain, she was feuding with her and saying, well, Meghan McCain, you only took the vaccine because you're fat. And so, well, that's what they're doing. They're doing the fat shaming here. And they're using that to downplay the risk of COVID to people who are not fat. Because again, yes, okay. So now, obviously being obese, overweight, etc., is a risk factor, not just for COVID, but for other things, right? And so, according to the World Obesity Federation, obesity is a leading cause of complications. So, for example, if you have diabetes or whatever, from weight gain, as it happens, also people who are not, obese can also get diabetes, but nonetheless, those kind of, health issues will also contribute to having difficulties fighting against COVID-19, which is why, of course, you should get vaccinated. It's even more important to get vaccinated. Now, the authors of the study do acknowledge that a country's age structure, relative wealth, and reporting capacity all have an impact on the amount of COVID-19 cases that are reported. And again, I'll also mention vaccination status. And in fact, while the World Obesity Federation's report does find some evidence that countries with higher obesity levels, like the United States, have reported the most COVID-19 deaths, it does not say that the most global virus deaths occurred in people who were overweight. The study just basically compared current obesity rates and COVID-19 death rates, whereas when you look at the United States has a 67% obesity rate. and the second highest COVID death rate. Now, other factors are also included here. Like, for example, lockdowns, right? How we didn't have a lockdown period in the United States. People who are anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, right? People who allowed this, and not just people, you have politicians, governors, people on the right, and left, who have allowed this to basically spread. And so, you get back to work policies. Hey, you should go ahead and die for the stock market, all that stuff. You have people that are just ignoring, or that had ignored, the warnings against gathering unmasked and going in and gathering unmasked in very large gatherings, which is affecting COVID. And so all of that contributes. And there are people who have died from COVID-19 or complications who are both overweight and not overweight. Again, I'm not saying that obese people don't have higher risk factors for complications with COVID-19 and therefore have a statistically higher chance of dying from the virus. That just means that I'm just saying that being obese is not the only factor, right? And so the right-wing narrative tends to be incredibly simplistic, saying only fat people get COVID, and therefore if you're not fat and if you're not old, and if you make the proper lifestyle choices, and that's really what the narrative comes down to. You fat people, why did you have to stuff another cheeseburger into your face? So, and since you did, if you get COVID and die, that's your fault. Because for the rest of us healthy people, COVID's totally fine, and it's just like a mild cold. So, and understand that that's what that narrative ultimately boils down to is you get COVID and die, it's your fault. It's totally your fault, 100%, and therefore we shouldn't have any federal measures to combat COVID-19. So again, understand what this all boils down to, right? And what this narrative really means. And again, you don't really have to stretch it that far from a self-deprecating joke or what was, what could be considered to be a self-deprecating joke is actually a narrative going on here from the far right. And so, by the way, one more thing. Let me just point out how this is karma biting Glenn Beck in the ass. In fact, back in mid-April of 2021, Glenn Beck went on Tucker Carlson's show and basically argued that since he had already had COVID-19, why does he need to be vaccinated again? Why? Because first of all, he didn't get vaccinated in the first place. And, that prior infection was a different strain. Meaning this new strain, the natural immunity, the antibodies that you gain, which by the way, tend to fade out pretty fast, according to studies. So you're basically left with this new variant and the time passed with no protection. Meaning he should have gotten vaccinated. This is why you get vaccinated. This is why. So you don't end up like Glenn Beck.